will discuss race and how it plays a factor, and how we didn't even talk about this topic because we were afraid.
A Black Executive Perspective.
We are coming to you live on another thought-provoking episode of the Black Executive Perspective Podcast, a safe space where we discuss all matters regarding race, culture, and those uncomfortable topics people tend to avoid. I'm your host, Tony Tidbit. So today, we are live in Martha's Vineyard, right here at the Sideline Store in Vineyard Haven, with entrepreneur, real estate agent, and community builder, India Rose, as founder of the Sideline brand and the Martha's Vineyard Black-owned business directory. India has turned her passion as a sideline mom into a movement that fuses fashion, culture, and impact. Today, we'll explore how she's creating year-round opportunities in a seasonal economy, building community through style, and reshaping what it means to be a Black business leader on the island. Let's get into it. India Rose, welcome to a Black Executive Perspective Podcast, my sister.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having me. Are you kidding me? I mean, it's
And
glad
welcome to
here.
Martha's Vineyard. And also, it's on Martha's Vineyard.
Ah,
Not in Martha's Vineyard. People say it all the time. You read it in articles, and it's always you're on Martha's Vineyard, not in the vineyard, but on.
I love it. I saw, it's like being on Gilligan's Island. Right, but they didn't
You're
ever get
on
off.
it.
They never got off, right? Right.
Sometimes I can't get off either the way this boat runs.
Well, number one, thank you for allowing BEP to come into your store this early morning, right? And as you can see some of the visual, we're going to dive into it. This is fantastic. And look, you're building a powerhouse, have built a powerhouse here on the island, right? So we want to dive into some of the things that you're doing because you are doing a lot of great things. And then obviously your husband too, he's special on the island, right? Everybody knows him. So let's back up a little bit. Let's talk about it. So you ready to get into it, my sister?
Let's go.
Okay, right.
Let's
So,
go.
look, like my boy always says, every hero or, has a beginning story, right? Before Superman, he was Clark Kent, and then Spider-Woman, Wonder Woman. So we want to dive into your, origin story, right? So look, you created Silent. Well, before I say it, I want you to talk a little bit about it. Tell us, why did you come up with the name Sidelines?
So it was an idea that I had that just was, really started with me being a sideline mom and me looking for a bag that was basically conducive to carry all of my son's stuff and all of my stuff when I was taking him to football camps. And it was actually when the pandemic hit. At that time, I was doing nonprofit consulting, business consulting, and things started to slow down. You didn't know what direction everything was going to go. Things were kind of like at a halt. What was everything going to look like? What were these businesses going to look like? A lot of storefronts started closing because people didn't know what the direction was going to be. So there were a lot of empty storefronts on the different main streets. So it was during that time I said, you know what, I have some extra time on my hands. I really want to kind of work on this idea that I have. And I started working with a product development specialist. And then that idea then translated into additional products. And then I saw that this space was one of the empty spaces, and I had always loved it. This is in Vineyard Haven. I live in Vineyard Haven. I grew up in Vineyard Haven. I don't know if you know, but I literally grew up on the island. I went to the Tisbury School for my grade school. I went to Martha's Vineyard Regional High School. So this is in Vineyard Haven. I mean, all the towns are everybody's towns on the vineyard, but I grew up in Vineyard Haven. So this space, 1,500 square feet, I've always loved it. And when I saw that it was available, I made an inquiry and I said, I want to have this space. But originally I was going to have an online store. I was going to go ahead and launch the idea. Sideline is derived from me being a sideline mom. My son plays D1 football. My daughter is a dancer. And it's all about me cheering them on from the sidelines, right? The echoes and the cheers that come from the sidelines. And it also takes out the negative connotation of the feeling of being sidelined, right? So when you look around my shop and you see ambition fuels the journey and, hustle verb, and you see different things that, kind of give you that motivational component, that's where it's derived from. Because as a sideline mom, we have an important job, and part of that, or the biggest part of that, is supporting, our kids, our family, our husbands, our friends, right, from the sidelines and what it is that they're doing.
Wow, that is awesome. I love it. Let me ask you this, because number one, you said a lot,
I did.
which is great, right? I mean, I love it, right? Let's back up a little bit, because you grew up here on the island. So talk a little bit about that experience, right? Growing up on an island, I've always said there's 15,000 year-round residents.
There's more. It's probably around 24,
So it's now
25,000
24. So
now.
talk a little bit
Yeah.
about growing up on an island where there's 24,000 pretty much year-round, but then it spikes to 150 or whatever it is, 200 for like 4 or 5 months.
Exactly. And it looks different, right? So each month looks very different on the island. The summer does not look like the winter. That demographic is not the same. So for me, I was born in New Bedford, Massachusetts, right? That's where my father's side of the family came from. My mother's side was born and raised here. When they moved us here, I absolutely hated it. Nobody looked like me. It was a complete culture shock. And the kids in my class weren't used to being around kids of color either. So then it was something where they were always looking for something to sort of relate to when it came to me. And that would be things that they saw on TV. It would be rap music. It would be, my, Nora, I would wear my hair curly and they would want to touch my hair and be like, how do you get your hair like that? Right. So there were all these different things that was a culture shock for them, me being in the class, and then also for me. So I didn't even want to be here at that time. I was like, I'm going to go live with my grandmother, like, get me out of here. And it wasn't until summer really kind of hit that I said, oh, okay, this is my people. This is my tribe. These are my friends, right? So the summer community looks really different. When everybody leaves, okay, at the end of August or beginning of September, I have a very different environment that I live in. So, and that's always been the case. I mean, I would say I left and then I came back and went off to school. Both my kids, 23 and 17, were born and raised here. But even for them, it was very important for me because you can be so isolated here and held by the ferry, and the ferries, whether they're going to let you leave or not, and access to opportunity, that I make sure that my kids were getting off this island and that they didn't sort of, it's a mental and a physical thing, right? And the access to opportunity thing. So both of my kids went off for high school, went off the island for high school. And that was very strategic, just to, one, for their education, but also to really kind of delve into their talents. But also because the winters look really different here and there is less access to opportunity in that way.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when you said they went off the island to go to high school, where did they go to high school?
Yeah, so my son went to Tilton School, which is a prep boarding school in New Hampshire. He was very football driven. So it was during that time, a football team, I mean, he was over 10 pounds when he was born. He was a lineman when he came out the womb, right? Like there was no question that, football was going to be a big part of his life as soon as he came in, right? As soon as he came into the world, he was holding the football like, oh, look, little football.
But his father's a big guy too, as well, right?
Oh yeah, 6'5", all the things, right? So, tall family and everything, to begin with. And then my daughter, she couldn't stop moving when she was in my belly. I thought she was going to be a soccer player or my little point guard because I like basketball, but she ended up being a dancer, which then made sense that she was doing a little tap dancing, in there too. But for him, it was football driven. We had a very mediocre football program here on the island, and we were trying to get him off. And we were going off the island for football camps and different things throughout the summers. And it was like, well, how did we do this with the boat, right? And I didn't even think of private school. I didn't even know that would be like affordable opportunity for me at that time. So he had a wonderful education and great experience at Tilton School. And then my daughter, who's now at the Cambridge School of Weston, very performance arts driven, a great progressive school. There's a social justice requirement, absolutely fantastic. She's part of the Black Student Union, Circle of Sisters, all of these great things that she would not have access to here if she stayed on the island in that way. And those experiences continue to shape their lives too.
Let me ask you this, because you talked about coming here, being different, people not used to seeing people of color on the island, all the microaggressions that you dealt with. And then to your point, you said, hey, I found my peeps when the summertime came, right?
Yes.
However, that can cause a lot of emotional issues, self-esteem issues, okay, because you're somewhere, and especially it's different if you can go to New York City and you can travel and go and see more diversity and stuff to that nature and build yourself up from a confidence standpoint. But when you're in a place where that's it. You don't see a lot of people look like you.
Right.
You don't see a lot of things going on. Talk a little bit in terms of how you built that entrepreneurial spirit, because let's be fair here. That's not easy to do,
Right.
right? And that takes a lot of confidence and guts and resolve, because you're going to be doing something, you're on your own. So tell us a little bit, where did you get that from? Where did that come from? And then a little bit about, so dive into that,
Yeah, that entrepreneurial spirit, I was born with that. So, I think regardless of what environment you're going to put me in, it would be sort of impossible not to, foster it or tap into it in some capacity. Right. So, I mean, lemonade stands, you name it. I was always trying to sell something as a kid. Right. Like that spirit, even with a day job. Okay. Just living here with the day job, I was always doing something. I was great. There was a gig, there was a hustle, there was, something that I was doing on my own. So I think when you have that entrepreneurial spirit and you're just kind of born with it, you're always building, right? So as a creative, like that mind doesn't stop, right? That's always going. If you're building something, then it's like, okay, you're thinking about what's the next thing to build or what makes sense, right? So on the vineyard, for me, it was, one, I always had that craving for that culture. Right. I always tried to latch on to whatever it is that I could, through education, through networking, all of those things, because I craved it. I just needed it being here, sort of feeling trapped here for a really long time. And then in adulthood, with the Martha's Vineyard Black Owned Business Directory, for instance, I created that in 2019, but that was born out of folks knowing that I lived here year round, knowing that I was part of the business community and looking for resources. Folks are looking for resources. So it was a passion project. It was like, you know what? People are in my DMs. People keep asking me questions about, all these different resources. Like, I don't have time to navigate this all day. So I just put it all in one place. Like, let me go ahead and put this, on a website, put it there and said, hey, go find each other, right? If you're looking for them, they need to be found, right? Especially in a seasonal tourist environment. It is hard when you have to make all of your money in a short period of time in the summertime. So what does that look like, right? So that was, what it is today, 7 years later, I never would have imagined, honestly, because it just took off in 2020 during the pandemic. And it was people were being very intentional about looking for those resources, about shopping for Black-owned businesses. And the Black-owned businesses appreciated that. Right. I mean, the people that needed to be found were being found. And that was driving revenue, that was driving folks to the Black-owned businesses. In the tourist environment, you need that.
Wow.
Here's the thing. What was the movie called? The Green Book?
Oh, yeah.
Right? So you the Black Book.
Right.
It's the Black Book, right? You're the Black Book here in Martha's Vineyard, right?
The Black pages.
But so all these things that you created, right? It was more of them. I want to give. It was a giving mindset, okay? Because to be fair, you could easily go off and do your own thing. Yeah, you had the entrepreneur spirit, but you could. It reminds me, and again, I'm dating myself, and my kids always say, every Christmas, every holiday season, I watch the same movie, right? I don't know if you ever saw The Wonderful Life.
Yep.
Okay. And so Jimmy Stewart is a smart, he's creative, he's got entrepreneurial spirit, right? But he never leads.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, his father dies. So now he's got to run the building alone. Right. And then he waits. And then all of a sudden now he saves up his money, he's going to college, but then he gives it to his brother. Right. And so he never got out, even though he was very creative and smart. So he was always giving to everyone else, and he got in trouble. So where did that giving spirit come from?
So that actually translates really well into my background of nonprofit leadership. The nonprofit piece has never really sort of left, I guess, my spirit. That's sort of always been a part of that too. Right now I'm in the Mariposa Museum, which is absolutely amazing, right off of Circuit Avenue in Oak Bluffs, with some amazing Black artists that are in there showcasing Black art, Black history, just Black excellence in every capacity you can think of in a museum setting. And that's something that's really important to me, right? But the giving back component has always been, a piece. I think I kind of caught the nonprofit bug while I was in my day job that was not in the nonprofit piece. And I started volunteering on different committees, helping with different events. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the process. I enjoyed the giving back component, and then ended up having a career as an executive director and a director of development and fundraising in the nonprofit world. And I love it. But when you're doing that and you're doing that full time, it's really hard for your entrepreneurial spirit and your creative juices to flow to build your own.
Correct.
So I tell folks all the time, if you're an entrepreneur, you're building a business, build philanthropy and charitable giving through that process, right? And honestly, every business model should have that, not only because it's the right thing to do and it's better for the community and the world, but it's also better for the bottom line too. And if you build that in, it's something that just, it flourishes, it helps lift other people up while you're building your business at the same time.
So listen, there's an old saying that there's, God gives everybody gifts. Okay, and some he gives as teachers, and some are this, and some are that. Do you feel that what you're doing is your purpose, is it innate? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I do. I say all the time that, one of my superpowers is sort of like identifying gaps and then being able to fill them. And I think that's true, not just in business, but also when it comes to like with people, right? Or being able to have conversations. I think through, the consulting arm or through coaching, that's why I'm so good at it. I've done basketball coaching and business coaching and nonprofit leadership coaching, right? All of those things. And I think that that's part of that process, right? So if you're identifying like a market, saying, hey, what's missing on the island right now? What do we need? What kind of food? What kind of restaurant? We're missing some barbecue right now, by the way. If anybody wants to start a business, we need some really good barbecue because I'm sick of making my own. And we need that, right?
For all of you out there, for all you out there that's looking to start a
Somebody
business, if you can cook and make barbecue, you better come out here to the vineyard.
Come here and open up, right? Seriously. But that's definitely sort of one of my gifts, I think, right? I think that, even when you come into my shop, I create a retail experience and a customer service that I feel is sort of unmatched, right? If you're going in anywhere sort of on the island in that way, because we lead with that, right? You don't come into my shop and I'm selling to you. Okay. We're selling the story. We're selling an experience. We're selling you comfort, right? It's like in a place that you want to be in. And through that, hopefully you also really like our merch, right? But when you come in, you should feel good. You'll hear music playing, you probably have one of my kids or me behind the counter and having a conversation, right? And I think that's part of it. I sort of lead authentically in that way through service with kindness, right? And helpfulness in that capacity. There have been so many folks that have come through that have thanked me. They're like, thank you for creating the directory in a way that I didn't know it impacted people, which was huge because some folks actually collect them, or when they come in here and it's like, man, this is the best hospitality we've had anywhere. Even if they weren't planning to buy anything, they're like, we have to support now, right? And they just feel that way because they feel connected to the experience, to the love they're being shown. And I think those are some of, my superpowers that just come naturally and authentically for me.
Here's the thing. And I'm feeling it across, as we're sitting here having this conversation, you have so much energy, right? And being able to balance all the things that you're doing is fantastic, right? And here's the other thing, though, is that, sometimes people, based on their circumstances, they allow their circumstances to dictate their life, right? You didn't do that.
Right.
You're here living on an island, you didn't like it, and you were like, look, I'm gonna make lemonade out of lemon, right? And not only that, you didn't make lemon, you make water out of wine. All right, you're making it happen. So let's dive into, you talked a little bit about the store. Let's dive in. I'm gonna play a quick little clip and about, what's inside Lines, and I want you to talk about some of the apparel and how you guys built it out and stuff to that nature. Sounds like a plan?
Okay, sounds like a
All right,
plan.
let's do it.
All right, let's go. See, as you're coming in, right? And that's a big part of it too, right? So we're having a pop-up. So Sideline is really a hub of culture, right? In that way. So you see as people gather, right? Whether it's a wine tasting, it's a product pop-up, getting everybody under the roof. When I knew that I was gonna have a space and have overhead, it was really important that I was gonna create that experience too. Providing a space for other entrepreneurs to be able to pop up, that was something that was important for me. And it's mutually beneficial, for folks to go ahead and be able to cross-market and also look at this as a space of community. And that's exactly what you see in that clip, right? You see people gathering, you see people having a conversation. That's really what this space is all about. And as far as the gear, you see the mix of Martha's Vineyard apparel, right? Which I try to do, a little differently. You're not going to come in and just see everything that just plain Martha's Vineyard writing, right? My Inkwell hoodie, the Oak Bluffs hoodie, my Lil Inkwell hoodie, right? Things are different. The fonts are different. The paper on the back wall when you walk in, the graffiti feel, but also elevated, like, creating something that's a little different, that feels good, but doesn't look like anything else that's on the street at the same time, with the motivational messaging that just kind of works across the board.
Here's the thing, right? When you think island, you think shorts, you think flip-flops, you think, real, just simple type stuff. Where did you come up with the creative, the art, the style, the coolness of the stuff that you put together here, Sideline?
I wanted something that was going to stand out. And, in a tourist environment, you see, you have your little lighthouses everywhere, right? You have the Martha's Vineyard postcards. You have, depending on what street you're on, you might have 6 or 8 different stores that are sort of reflecting, sort of the same tourist things, right? And that's all well and good. But for me, I wanted something different, right? So with Sideline, with the motivational component, people come in, they see the Ambition Fuels the Journey, for instance, which is a staple, and it relates to people in a different way, right? It touches them in a different way. The Inkwell hoodies, my South Beach hoodies, like all of those different things, I do it with a twist because I want it to be something that they can relate to, but that's also stylish and trendy for them, right? So it's a piece of Martha's Vineyard, right? But also something that they could rock anywhere, anytime, that they would, in their favorite colors or color, I do a lot of different sorority, fraternity color combinations and stuff, which people appreciate in our demographic throughout the summer. So that's really important for me to do something that's a little different. If I have, or I'm working on something, I think, oh, no, that's not it, because it might look like 3 or 4 other stores carry the same thing. When you get something here, you can't get it anywhere else. That, this isn't something you're also going to duplicate, something off the street. You got it at Sideline, or it's a piece of Martha's Vineyard streetwear.
My girl, I love it. And just being in the store and feeling the vibe, and more importantly, the stuff here exemplifies your energy, your creativity. It pops out, right? So you guys got to come out here and check out Sideline, right? And when you buy the stuff, you ain't gonna be on the sideline. You're gonna be on the forefront, right?
The 50-yard line.
Yeah, you're gonna be making it happen, right? Because you're gonna stand out, you're gonna look cool, and especially today, especially being on this beautiful island, you want something that's gonna help you keep your brand and stand your brand out. So definitely come by Sidelines. A question that I have for you, there's a lot of Black women who are trying to build their own business.
Mhm.
Okay. They wanna, and here's the thing, they didn't grow up on the island. They might have grew up in New York City.
Yeah.
They might be from Detroit, LA, or Tupelo, Mississippi, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
They may have the same creative vision. They may have been born with that entrepreneurial spirit where they want to go out and they want to create something and do something. But at the end of the day, they have a lot of different, how should I say, adversity along the way, right? And I would imagine, just to be fair, I know you, we talked about being a superhero. So I know you got,
which can be and feel like a lot of pressure, particularly for Black women that carry a lot of weight in general.
Well, that's
right?
what I want to dive into, right?
Yeah.
So talk a little bit, because we're here, and I'm not saying this is the end project,
Right.
but at the end of the day, talk about a little adversity that you went through to make this happen, regardless of all the superpowers that you have.
Right. I mean, balance, right? People always talk about balance, of work-life balance. And whenever I hear that, I think, okay, well, what does that look like? And I think even just that term alone is a lot of pressure, because people are always trying to find it and they're never actually getting there. And I think that's so customized. I think that's so individual, because for me, the work that I do, I'm always working. If I'm in a social environment, I'm building relationships, right? That's work, whether it's a relationship that, is going, that's a friendship, that's professional, whatever that might be, something that nurtures my soul or my business, right? Any of those things. So for me, in that way, okay, I'm always going, right? The mind is always going, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm exhausted from it, right? Because it's something that I enjoy. It's something that I'm always looking forward to. So much so I might be having a conversation with a creative that isn't an entrepreneur, that is in the corporate world. And we're talking about it, I'm like, you ever thought about starting a business? You ever thought about, how you can monetize that? Or like, oh my God, you're so, you're so skilled, or, so my mind is always going in that way. And they're like, I don't know if I would be, well, not everybody's built that way, right? But I can't shut that off either. And the entrepreneurial journey is not for the faint of heart in any capacity. Self-care is very important. You have to prioritize that. But there's also a lot of pressure of, and something that I have been really firm and, I guess kind of drives me is not comparing myself to other people. I'll have certain folks that may come into the shop that'll compare like, oh, this is different. It's not like this, or, like this. And I don't do that. So whatever it is that I'm doing and that I'm working on, I'm super hyper focused, and it's what it needs to be on brand for me. And I think what ends up happening with a lot of folks who are starting out is that they spend so much time and energy comparing themselves to other businesses, to other products, to other social media accounts that, they're comparing themselves to the content, and or it may hold them back because they don't think that they're on that level or that they would be able to compete in a market. And I think that's a lot of pressure. People need to go ahead and start. You need to remember why you started, because I think that's a big part of it. And it's a journey. So I think that where a lot of things end up, we have to fail, we have to pivot, we have to do all those things to really be successful. That's part of it. You have to then get back up. You have to see what worked, what didn't work, accept that and say, okay, this isn't working as much. I'm going to go ahead and go that way. I've done that a gazillion times in the last 5 years, right? And that's how I kind of keep going, because I'm also paying attention, right? But it can be really, there's a lot of pressure. There can be a lot of anxiety in entrepreneur, or worrying about what your next dollar is going to come from once you start, right? And I say, stay in your lane, stay and remember why you started to begin with. Stay on your brand and be authentic, because if you're not authentic through that process, or it looks like you're just trying to make short money or something like that, or taking shortcuts, there are no shortcuts. There just isn't. You're going to realize that every shortcut that you're trying to take ends up actually being the long road, and you're never actually going to get there.
I love it.
I
I
love it.
love
I
it. I
love it.
love it.
Let
Let
me
me
ask you
ask you
this.
this.
In your roles, building
Building
her
her
brand,
brand,
her
her
business,
business,
energetic,
energetic,
confident,
confident,
in a
in a
place
place
where
where
the
the
majority of
majority
the
of the
year
year
there's
there's
not a
not a
lot of
lot of
people
people
look
look
like
like
her,
her,
especially
especially
Black
Black
women,
women,
trying to lead the
the
pack.
pack.
Talk
Talk
to
to
us
us
about
about
a
a
time
time
when
when
you
you
were,
were
there
there
was
was
a
a
fork
fork
in
in
the
the
road,
road
when
when
you
you
said,
said,
I
I
don't
don't
know
know
if
if
I
I
can,
can,
I
I
don't know
don't
if
know
I
if I
made the
made the
right
right
decision.
decision.
Talk a
Talk a
little bit
little bit
about
about
that.
that.
And what
And
did
what
you
did
Okay.
you
do?
do?
Well, I can tell you, when I started the Martha Zuni Black-owned business directory, I was a little hesitant because I wasn't sure how it was going to be received on the island, whether it's locals, the larger vineyard, population, because it wasn't something that existed like that some folks would say is separate, or you hear the word divisive, or like all of these different things, right? So that was something that, definitely held me back in a certain degree, in wanting to announce it, or, really kind of like putting it out there, or sort of being vulnerable through that process. And I can tell you now, 7 years later, um, it was, and I appreciate the partnership through the Martha's Vineyard Chamber of Commerce, where they have created space to be able to also, just create a nice link, right? So folks who are going through the Chamber of Commerce, you also can, be directed to the Black-owned business directory, which is really great. I appreciate their leadership for that. And they recently shared it, and this is a perfect example of when you're sitting back and thinking like, ooh, okay, maybe this doesn't feel good, but at the same time, you circle back to why you started, and you kind of see that the cheers outweigh sort of the criticism, because if you go into that share of the Chamber of Commerce, you'll see all of these different folks that are saying, well, where's the white business directory? Oh, thank you for providing a resource of where not to shop, right? So you have all of these different things like, oh, why? Well, don't just support the Black business, support all the businesses on the
But
But
let
let
island.
me
me
ask
ask
you
you
this.
this.
Yeah.
Were
Were
they
they
supporting
supporting
all the
all the
businesses
businesses
on the
on the
island?
island?
Probably not.
Okay. So in
So
other
in other
words,
words,
when
when
you
you
Not an
decided,
decided,
opportunity to pick and implement racism, right?
exactly. So
exactly.
when
Right.
you
When you
decided
decided
that I'm
that
going
I'm
to
going to
do
do
something
something
for the
for the
Black
Black
businesses so
businesses so
they
they
could
could
be
be
seen,
seen,
then
then
there
there
was a
was a
lot
lot
of
of
pushback.
pushback.
And
And
that's
that's
where
where
you
you
heard
heard
the
the
divisiveness, or why do you doing this and this and that. And to be
Right.
fair, that can be overwhelming.
Oh, sure.
Okay. Especially because then you're thinking, and you're not thinking to be You're not thinking to be divisive.
Right.
You're thinking to being proactive and is
Yeah.
trying to help the other businesses that probably don't get that type of promotion. And
Absolutely.
it was because they don't get that type of promotion, they may not last long, right?
Exactly.
So you're trying to do something to really be a helpful, but
Yeah.
then you get all the criticism and it becomes a race thing,
Oh, yeah.
right? And then now you got to deal with that and then walk amongst everybody here. And then they're saying, see, what was that? My man said they're talking about, what was my cut by the Eagles? They're talking behind you.
Yep.
All right,
Exactly.
all right.
Yeah.
And so that can be deflating.
Definitely. And there's, I mean, there's, if you look in the window, there's a little sticker that says MV local Black owned, right? So everybody that's in the directory that has a storefront, that has a restaurant, anything like that, they have the little sticker, right? Some put it up, some don't. And that was one of the things that also sort of worried me in the beginning as well, was were there going to be some Black owned businesses that were worried that they were going to be a target? Right? Because you worry about those things. You worry about the safety. Now, the great thing about the Martha's Vineyard or Massachusetts, and the great thing about the directory itself is that there has been way, 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 way more support, right? Than all of that noise, than the racism and then that noise, right? And there are allies that are like, wait a minute, we need to go here and support. This is fantastic, right? I'm going to go ahead and share this. Can I grab one of the directories, put it in my rental home or something, right? So then you hear and you see that. So luckily that ended up being the case, and that the directory continues to grow. The traffic is absolutely insane, to the websites and to the shops that are literally walking in and saying, it's Black owned. Is this us in here? Right. And those are, things that feel good. But is that always a smooth process? Are you always like, oh, sitting back and you're just watching, some of that feedback and everything else? But the support luckily cancels out the noise. Right. But it's not always easy.
Look, at the end of the day, nothing grows in the comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
And growth comes from being uncomfortable.
Yes.
Right? But
That's
you can't stop.
right.
And see, what happens is that people become uncomfortable, then they go back into their comfort zone.
Right.
And so you were uncomfortable.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
And
Exactly.
that's
You
a
have to
real
be.
thing, though. 'Cause see, that's what I want to hear. It's a
Yeah.
real thing.
Yep.
And you have doubt and all those things, but you kept pushing forward.
Yep.
Okay. And then that's where you get the growth. Right?
Exactly.
So let me ask you this in closing, because we have some audience members, and I know they got a couple of questions.
Sure.
Right? So before I go to them, I want to ask you this. Like I said, there's Black women or Black males or whatever it could be, anybody who's looking to start a business, right? And especially in today's world where corporations are shrinking.
Mm-hmm.
More people are laid off,
Yeah.
and especially people who have expertise, who've been in the corporate game for 10, 12, 20 years, 30 years, and then all of a sudden,
Right.
and they have a talent, they have an expertise that they can give like you have.
Yeah.
What advice would you give them, and especially Black women,
Mm-hmm.
right? What advice would you give them to go ahead if they're interested, right? Because there are people on the fence, and we
Yeah.
know this ain't for everybody.
Right.
Okay, so we know that, right? So what advice would you give them in terms of making the right decision to start their own business?
Mhm.
And then when they start it, what they should do in terms of being successful?
Well, the first thing I would say is that you don't have to do everything. And I think that holds a lot of people back and or is a big part of the overwhelm. So if you're thinking, well, like, oh, I got to do, accounting, I have the books, I have to do the social media, I have to blah, 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 blah. I think that is a big part of why some people just decide they're going to stop. There's different ways. One, you can be able to outsource and you can do it with a minimal budget. You can also barter. If there's somebody that's trying to build up their portfolio or just starting out with social media, photography or something, go ahead and partner with them, right? Go ahead and get those assets, while at the same time, they're building their portfolio and or, business vendors and recommendations. And I think that's a big part of it is you can also choose whether or not you want to be the face of your business or not. A lot of product-based folks who are making things or, artisans who kind of want to be behind the scenes that, are actually making the product or doing the work. They might not necessarily want to be the face of their company because that isn't where they want to be. And that's okay too. You can go ahead and you can be a star and you can create all of that. You can build a website around that. You can have somebody else else at the forefront that's a partner that can support you in that way. So there's a lot of different, like, think about what it is that you want to do, the part that you look forward to the most. There's always going to be something in business like, this kind of comes with the territory. There's always going to be something that you're going to have to do through that process because it's a business. You're running a business, right? But for the most part, really think about what it is that you want to focus on. Think about what you can go ahead and outsource, right? Think about, how you can barter, okay, to sort of help whatever that budget might be. Finding really, really good talent. And I have this conversation with other business owners and leaders, okay, of course, all the time, is finding the right people. I feel like that's the biggest challenge. It's finding the right people to be within your circle, finding somebody that, and I have this amazing chief of staff. Her name is Matea. Hopefully she's watching at some point. But finding the right folks that can represent you, that can represent your brand, where you don't have to worry about them. You don't have to worry what's going to come out of their mouth, or something that's going to be weird or not provide the best experience. Those things, that's the most important thing that for me, right, is building a team. And I know that that's one of the hardest things for other entrepreneurs. But go ahead, get started, outsource where you can, barter where you can, do something on Fiverr if you need to. Think about those things, but you don't have to do it all.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, we're running out of time. So we got one. Anybody got a question they wanted to ask? I think we're good. Okay. So, I think you answered everything that people wanted to find out. All right. So, India Rose, we want to thank you for allowing the Black Executive Perspective podcast to come here, learn a lot more about you, really check out the Sideline Gear, right? Please make sure you come and check out Sideline. And can people order online?
Absolutely. SidelineBrand.com or MVStreetwear.com for all of your Martha's Vineyard gear as well. And for the Martha's Vineyard Black-owned business directory is blackownedmv.com.
I love it. Check out Sideline. Go to the website. If you can't get here, buy something. But if you're here on the island or you're coming here to make a vacation stop in, ask for India Rose. What was your chief of staff name too?
Yeah, or Matea Trustee.
Matea Trustee, because I met her. She's awesome as well, right? So we want to thank India Rose for again appearing on the Black Executive Perspective podcast. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so please don't forget to check out the next Need to Know by Dr. Nasinga Burton. Dr. Burton talks about the timely and crucial topics that you don't have time to check out. Check it out here on the Black Executive Perspective podcast every Thursday. Need to Know with Dr. Nasinga Burton. And don't forget to check out our roundtable Pull Up Speak Up. We have those provocative, real conversations. It's a revolution, not an episode. So don't forget to check out Pull Up Speak Up here on the Black Executive Perspective podcast. So as you guys know, our goal, our mission is to eliminate all forms of discrimination, right? So this is your first time watching or listening to a Black Executive Perspective podcast. We believe in eradicating discrimination. So we have a call to action called LESS. LESS. We want everyone to incorporate LESS because this is something that you can do in your walk. So the L stands for learn. We want everyone to learn about racial and cultural nuances that you're not familiar with, which is going to enlighten you. And then after you learn, you have the letter E, which stands for empathy. Now, since you've learned, now you can be more empathetic to people that you didn't know, because now you can put yourself in their shoes. And then the first S is share. You want to share what you learn to other people so they can become enlightened. And then the final S is stop. We want to stop discrimination as it walks in our path. So if Aunt Jenny or Uncle Joe says something inappropriate at the Sunday dinner table, you say, Aunt Jenny, Uncle Joe, we don't believe that, we don't say that, and you stop it right there. So if everyone can incorporate LESS, LESS, we'll build a more fair, more understanding world, and we all will see the change that we want to see, because less will become more. All right. Don't forget to continue to watch the Black Executive Perspective podcast on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can follow us on our socials of LinkedIn, X, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram at Black Exec. For our fabulous guests, the multi-hyphenated India Rose. I'm Tony Tidbit. We talked about it. We learned about it. We're going to keep striving and thriving about it. We love you. And guess what? We're out.